this is the contractually obligated player's handbook, so you know what type of content I'm making today. And remember 3.5? That was a lot of fun if you knew how to min-max.
In my thoughts and in my dreams, they're always in my mind. These songs of hobbits, dwarves and men, and elves, come close your eyes. You can see them too.
Here are two statements that should not be controversial. Dungeons & Dragons is for everyone. That is correct. However, your table is not. That is also correct. Now, if those two things feel incongruous, then don't you worry, you silly little goose. That's why this video exists. And also, if you'd like a fuller diatribe on the former statement, then let me know down in the comments, because that would require a deep dive into the fundamentals of who Gary Gygax was and an exploration of the type of person who dominated the Dungeons & Dragons space for a long time.
White male rage, white male rage, white male rage.
Yeah, why do you think Riceland was everybody's favorite, you bunch of nerds? That is a joke for like 3 people. But hopefully for the rest of you who are sticking around, let's explore that latter statement. You see, Dungeons & Dragons is like professional wrestling. That is to say, it is like water. It is malleable. It will take the shape of whatever you put it in. Dating all the way back to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the first version of the game, if those words didn't make sense to you, even Gary Gygax himself said that even the most important rule was meant to be bent to better suit your individual campaign. My point being that, say, Dungeons & Daddies are not playing the game wrong because there are several instances wherein the success of Henry Oak's spellcasting is predicated on player Will Campos successfully playing a game of Jezebel. And Critical Role are not playing the game right because they remember things like, what in the actual fuck is a concentration check? Both of these approaches fit within the game of Dungeons & Dragons because they match the tone of both the shows that they are producing and the game the table has agreed to play. Now let's talk about approach real quick, because there are just as many valid approaches to Dungeons & Dragons as there are settings for Dungeons & Dragons. And saying that out loud, oh, do I miss Sigil? Oh, so cool! Each alignment chart got their own dedicated world, and dreams and emotions were made manifest in real time. Oh, so rad! Like that desert setting. I don't even remember your name. Get the fuck out of here! You're the real Forgotten Realms. Because despite the literal library's worth of text and rules, Dungeons & Dragons is a pretty free-reign game. The wide appeal is in freedom, the freedom to, say, wild shape into the form of a dog and take a piss on the main villain's leg. And that freedom, that malleability, is just as applicable to approaches to Dungeons & Dragons. D&D is a game, no doubt, but just what type of game is it? Is D&D a number-crunching war simulator? Yes. Is D&D a tactical miniatures-based strategy game? Yes. Is D&D a carefree violence simulacrum? Yes again. Is D&D fundamentally an exercise in empathy, an experiment of game design meant not to reflect what it meant to be a general hoarding over waves of faceless soldiers in historical war games, but to reflect the story of those soldiers? Yes, and that's also a deep-cut fun fact about the origins of Dungeons & Dragons, and I did that one for you for free. Is Dungeons & Dragons an improvisational shared storytelling experience between you and a group of your close-knit friends? Also yes, and you can tell which approach I value the most based on how I ended this whole list. And because no one approach is more valid than any other, your enjoyment will vary wildly based on what you want out of the experience. I personally lean very heavily into the roleplay aspect of it. I sometimes even ignore the tabletop bit. I stand up, I get into character, I want to move around. The tactile space of it is very appealing to me. And that's not for everyone, which is both fair and valid. The ability to craft characters to tell stories is the exciting part for me. I have something of a reputation for not caring about mechanics. And spoilers, this is correct because I do not. Speaking of spoilers, here's another one. This video is about to get really personal. This is gonna involve some stories from like my high school D&D group, so I'm gonna have to bleep some names out. We'll see how it goes. So my group, like many others, had a problem player, but upon reflection, I don't think he was so much of a problem player. I think what he wanted out of the game simply ran counter to what we as a group wanted, or if I'm being brutally honest, at least what I wanted. JPEG of Fall Out Boy. I digress. A little bit of dressing for the story. A few years into being a group, we decided to experiment with other tabletop RPGs, and we ran a Shadowrun campaign. I and Person X decided to make characters with a pre-existing backstory and dynamic. We were brothers. I played Reed, and he played Kato, a brick shithouse orc with big fuck-off devil ears. This detail will be important for later. Very long story short, because people in my real life have tuned out whenever I start talking about my D&D campaigns, but hey, just sound off in the comments if you want me to do that, because I'm more than willing to talk about my Dungeons & Dragons campaigns! My character pulled a classic self-sacrifice play for his little brother Kato, and this following session was simply players dealing with that. Using D&D as a therapeutic tool to experience grief? I'm all about that! My DM even allowed me to leave gifts to the other characters behind after my death, and just to illustrate to you what type of player I am, one of our friends had a recorder and I asked if I could borrow it to leave a little last will and testament to Kato in character. I thought it was a real nice touch, reflect what is happening in-game actually at the table, playing this recording for everyone to hear. It was a touch of role-playing that I was excited about and I was emotionally invested in. But when I look back upon this moment and I think about Person X's face, I would describe it as mild disinterest. He kind of turned it into a gag and took the gift I left behind, I'm pretty sure it was a hat, and stuck it through one of the horns on his head. And I do not bring this up in any way to disparage my friend, to say, how dare he not be grateful for this moment of role-playing I've given him, but rather to illustrate my point on a more personal and emotional level. One last anecdote, and for all I know, this is not a thing he ever cared about, but when I replay it in my head, the timeline, it feels like a pivotal moment. So there was one session that ended with my character crying on the phone, and I felt like that was a real poignant, emotional ending. Really ended the session on this emotional beat. Well, Person X happened to leave the group shortly after this session. He gave a rather lengthy explanation of why he chose to leave the group, sent to the group chat, the body of which said message has long been forgotten to Facebook accounts that no longer exist, but the ending is something that has stuck with me to this very day. It feels like we've gone from gamers to wannabe actors, and some of us are tired of acting.
What we wanted out of the game was diametrically opposed.
And just like, fuck, it really hits. And hey man, I don't know if you're watching, there's every chance in the world you're not, and there's even more of a chance you no longer care about this stuff, but if you are, I'd just like to say sorry. I literally showed up one day out of the blue and took your long-standing group and turned it into something you didn't find enjoyable, and that's kind of a dick move on my part. In a game fundamentally about empathy, I failed to exercise any, and I'm sorry for that, man. Was I the problem player the whole time? Fuck! Speaking of time, I'm pretty sure back in the day my reaction to this message was, well, that's Person being Person, but looking back on it, I think he did the mature and sensible thing. If the group you're currently in does not approach the game the way you approach it, if they do not do the thing you want to be doing, you should probably find a group who is? The point of the video and statement I made at the beginning was not to be exclusionary. Gatekeeping is for insecure pricks. Dungeons & Dragons is a great many things, and that includes a time sink. Look at all of these words. And your time, make no doubt, is a precious commodity. If you are going to invest in this hobby, then it should be with a group who play the way you want to play. Because at the end of the day, the only wrong way to play Dungeons & Dragons is in a way that does not incentivize fun for the whole group. This video got so much more personal than I was expecting, and now it feels a little weird to ask you to do the YouTube things, but if you enjoyed the video, it would be of great help to me and the channel if you could do the things that make the YouTube algorithm overlords happy. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you have anything to say, leave a comment. Tell me I'm wrong and stupid. That's fair and valid. I'd love to know all the ways in which I'm wrong about Dungeons & Dragons. If you thought this video was fun, maybe share it around. It's all up to you, man. Number 3.5, this was fun.